we can really place almost all of the future successes of the Catholic Church among the Lakota. We can really attribute those successes to one man. And um, we're talking here about Father Pierre de Smet, Jesuit, 1801 to 1873, and he's really just a wonderful character. He's one of these people I wish I could have met him and sat down and talked to him, because if for no other reason, how successful he was with making relations with the Native American tribes and what that must have been like. He's got some journals. I mean, we can follow the story, we can see why he was successful. And I would say the number one reason why he's successful is because he truly did put the interests of the tribes first in his heart. And yes, that does include bringing them the gospel, bringing them the truth of Christ's church, but also just caring for the people themselves. Okay, and that's something in missionary work that you can't separate the two, right? You can't separate bringing them Christ from actually truly caring about them as people. And in turn, the Native Americans absolutely loved Father De Smet. I mean, there was a General Stanley of the U.S. Army who noted that he had never seen a man have more affection from Native Americans than the Native Americans had for Father De Smet. So he's born in Belgium. He travels extensively in the Americas, making friendly relations with various tribes, not just the Lakota, but tribes all throughout. And he makes it a habit. He never travels with anyone armed, so there's that. He only traveled with the translator, and he always partook of the Calumet rituals, which were the peace pipe rituals, because in the Native American cultures where they had the sacred pipe, when you came into their village, if you refused to smoke the native pipe, that to them was a sign of hostility. And you would, on the best of terms, you would leave as a hostile. On the worst of terms, you wouldn't leave at all. So, he would always partake of the pipe. The Lakota, in turn, saw him as a great holy man. And his journeys into the tribes, the Lakotas as well as the other tribes, saw baptisms in the thousands. Chief Redfish told him that he knew that the words of the Black Robes prayers were very powerful before the Great Spirit. Now, there's an interesting story with Chief Redfish, because he had a daughter, Chief Redfish, who was kidnapped, I believe was kidnapped by the Cheyenne. And while Father De Smet was there speaking with Chief Redfish was the Lakota leader, and Redfish knew that there was something powerful about these people that the Lakota at this point were affectionately referring to as the Black Robes, of course, because of the long black robes that the Catholic priests wore. So he knew that the Black Robes were a special group, and he begs Father De Smet to pray to the Great Spirit that his daughter would be protected or freed. So the father agrees. He prays with Chief Redfish, and as he's praying, uh, Redfish's daughter escapes from the Cheyenne tribe and comes back to her father. And word of this just spread like wildfire among the Lakota, that this great holy man, this Black Robe, Father De Smet, prayed for one of their people, and their people were freed from one of the. Because really, if you were a man and you got captured by another tribe, you were pretty much done for. If you were a woman and you got captured by another tribe, you would probably just end up married to one of the people in their tribe. So they had a great affection for him. He was made a member of the Yanktones and was adopted as a brother by Chief Two Bears. And because of this relationship with Chief Two Bears, the Yanktones were one of the Nakota tribes of the Sioux Confederacy. The Two Bears wanted the priests brought in to the Yanktones to minister to his people. And he just, in very similar terms to what Redfish was speaking of, told Father de Smet that the sacraments that the black robes were administering were very good and powerful medicine. We'll talk about medicine later, as the Native Americans viewed what medicine was. Now, he was also at the Great Council of 1851, where the Fort Laramie Treaty was signed. And I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall. I don't know exactly what he was doing. As far as I've seen, I haven't seen the records of how he was doing this. Well, we know we do know for one that he was acting as a representative for the Native American tribes. And when he was there, he was interjecting for them, speaking up for them, and was advocating for them to the US government. So there's that, which again is just really what endears him to the people. But it was also said that he performed about 800 baptisms at the Great Council there. So as I mentioned, he's friends with Two Bears. He's friends with Chief Redfish. He's friends with Sitting Bull, interestingly enough, and we're going to mention that again here in a little bit. And he's also friends with Red Cloud. So I want to point out one thing here. Remember, I was just talking about before how those first wave of Jesuit missionaries were like special forces. Well, I do want to make a point that at the time that we're talking about here, unlike that first wave of missionaries where everything was new and really kind of dangerous, at this point, the tribes, for the most part, I mean, they could still potentially be violent and there could be violent altercations, but for the most part, they had made peace, especially with the French, and in particular with the Catholic missionaries. The the tribes, I mean, the Lakota people were able to differentiate among the Wasichus the various groups of Wasichus, right? So they knew that an agency man for the government was different than a U.S. military man, and they knew that a U.S. military man was different than the than a Frenchman, and they knew that a Wasichu priest, a Wasichu black robe, was different than all of them. Okay, and now because of that, the danger that these missionaries faced was considerably less than what the first wave of missionaries faced into the America. So I want to be clear that this is a little bit more of a peaceful time for the missionaries, but it's still hard work. Okay, they're still working hard, and at the same time, they are writing their stories and sending them back to Europe. And the European imaginations are kind of like set afire with these like romantic tales by writers like Karl May. And the Jesuits in particular were always keen to write back to France and their homelands about the virtues and the piety that's common among the Native American tribes. I mean, Father de Smet, if you read his writings, he was clear that the Native Americans, some of the stereotypes that Westerners portrayed the Native Americans as, Father de Smet said that some of those stereotypes only came after the Native American tribes were introduced to the vices of white people. Okay, I mean, there was one of his journals, I know he talked about, um, well, one, he witnessed the dances of Native American women, and he talked about just how modest their dances were. And he made the comparison. He said just how modest their dances were compared to the way that he had seen European women dancing. Another thing was he said that, you really didn't see the kind of stereotypes that came with the Native Americans and drinking until the Washichus brought in their alcohol, because Native Americans didn't have alcohol, whiskey, like they did until the U.S. business interest loved to pawn off their whiskey to the Native American tribes. And he also said, and this is an interesting thing, that the it was impossible. I don't know about all the languages, but I know in Lakota, and it might have been in all the languages. Anyways, he said that it was impossible, at least in Lakota for sure, to break the second commandment. It was impossible to take the Lord's name in vain because they didn't have curse words. So because of that, there was no concept to them. They had the concept of the Great Spirit, but you would never curse the Great Spirit, unlike what was very common in Wasichu language, where you would take the Lord's name in vain, which would just make the Native Americans aghast to learn that Wasichus would do this. So they brought, as they're writing back about the virtues and the piety among the tribes, it brought this desire among Europeans to come and help bring the gospel to the Native Americans. So that's really where you get this influx of the Jesuits coming in to minister to the tribes. Now we have to